My name is Miya Turnbull. I live in Canada, specifically Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is part of Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'm very happy to present to you my life's work so far in mask making. I work in many different mediums, but my main body of works are these masks, which are three-dimensional self-portraits, a combination of sculpture, photography, and collage. I typically use paper mache and printed photographs to construct them, but I'm always experimenting with different materials. I currently have over 100 in my collection so far. I am using masks as a metaphor for persona, self-image, and identity. I draw from the traditional uses of masks worn for masquerade and disguise, for example, in Halloween and theater, and also transformation worn during ceremonies and rituals. And of course, we know all too well, shielding each other from COVID, that masks are also a symbol of protection. Each mask is a portrait of myself in some form. I create numerous iterations of my image as a way to explore different facets of my identity and the space in between, whether it's a public and private, beauty and the grotesque, or in my case, as biracial, Japanese and Caucasian. By keeping my image a constant, I am able to make variations of myself and further explore my heritage, experiences, and perceptions, making them visible, tangible, and wearable. Ironically, my face is on the front of the mask, at the same time concealing my face behind it. Because these masks are photorealistic, I can really play and manipulate how you see me. This was my first photo mask, which is what I call this technique, and it was a self-portrait. I began making these masks in the late 90s while I was doing my Bachelor of Fine Arts at the University of Lethbridge in Alberta. I was taking several different classes in printmaking, photography, sculpture, and painting, and I was also taking anthropology, biology, and psychology. At one point, the drama department was offering a mask making class, which was something I'd always been interested in learning, and all these things came together. This photo was from my graduation exhibit over 20 years ago. I had been making masks of friends and family and even of doll faces. This was from a solo exhibit at the Craig Gallery in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia in 2007. There had been lots of gaps in my work after graduating university. I moved to Montreal from Alberta and I was working full-time paying off student loans. I had no idea how to apply for grants or how to make an exhibit proposal. I ended up in Halifax after a turn of events and started making masks again. I found Halifax to be very supportive, and after a few years, I started getting funding and began developing my mask work and honing in on a unified body of work of self-portraits. A couple of reasons I decided to stick strictly with self-portraits. One, it was a way to simplify my body of work. I always had access and permission with my own face, and it made sense to create a body of work where there was an anchor with variations streaming out from there as a way to explore my identity. I tried to keep up with making artwork, and then I had a baby, which halted everything for a good 10 years. Fast forward to 3 years ago, when I was invited to exhibit my masks at the Japanese Canadian Cultural Centre Gallery in Toronto. This was a huge, long space, and although I had about 30 masks in my collection at the time, I knew I needed and wanted to make more to fit the space well. This was just the spark I needed to get back into the studio. I applied for a creation grant to make new work from Arts Nova Scotia, and I was successful, and I made over 30 new masks in a 6-month period, so in the end I had over 60 masks to exhibit. This is a photo from that exhibit in 2019. This was a huge turning point for me. Not only was it the reason I got back into mask making again, and I haven't stopped working 24/7 since, it was also the first time I recognized myself as a Japanese Canadian artist. The masks that are hanging in the foreground are from a series called Somewhere in Between, and it was made in 2005. I used to display them on these custom-built pedestals that matched my height exactly, but then I switched to hanging them by fishing line like a mobile, which I like even better because then the masks are more in dialogue with each other, which you can see here. These 5 masks are identical except for the slanting of the eyes on the front of the masks. The one in the middle is representative of me as half Japanese, and from there the eyes slant up or down to represent, in theory, more Japanese or more Caucasian. Of course, it gets distorted the more I slant the eyes. What I'm asking in this piece is, do you see me differently if my eyes are slanted this way or that way? Do you react differently to me based on how I look? An interesting illusion appears when you see the concave faces on the inside of the masks. The faces appear to protrude out into space because of the way our brains process visual information within a concave space. The faces on the inside are identical, with eyes closed as if in meditation or reflecting inward, representing an inner self. And you can see that illusion of the face looks like it's coming out into space, but it's really in. The masks in the foreground of this picture are also inside out masks, which is what I call the masks that have faces on both the front of the masks as well as the concave inner space, which is also a space typically not presented or explored. It's hard to see, but the one closest to us has an origami crane suspended on the inside of the mask, and this one here has a mask of my daughter nestled within mine. They are suspended by fishing line from the ceiling, and viewers can walk around them to see the hidden faces. The inside space of the mask is really interesting to me. For one, this space can represent subconsciousness or simply private space as opposed to the persona that we show the world. This is one of the hanging masks from the previous slide. Here's where I start to combine masks together, which begins a sculpture series later on. I took a hammer to 2 masks, which was the weirdest feeling because my face was already on it, so I really had to dissociate from it. After they were broken, I reattached them together and then put a face on the inside. This is another inside out mask. I was learning Japanese calligraphy at the time, and through this I was also learning kanji, which is Japanese characters. This was great on so many levels. When I was learning some of the language, and there's a whole history there with my mom's past and how she lost her language due to the racism and internment of Japanese Canadians in World War II. So it's reconnecting and reclaiming with our heritage. 2, the art form in itself is meditative and so beautiful, and it wasn't long before I started incorporating it into my masks. These are 2 kanji characters for inside and outside painted on my face. And again, these are 2 masks combined together. Usually when I'm making the photo collage on the mask, I cut up the pieces of the photographs of the face. I made these ones by ripping it up instead before collaging the image together, which gives it a really interesting texture. The one on the left shows cracks in between the skin, and in this case, it's Japanese writing, which is a reference for being half Japanese. I call this series shift masks because the faces are shifted off center. Here I am looking at the masks in layers, where the surface of the mask is different from the structure, and the face isn't lined up where it should be, and because of that, distortions occur. I always think of these ones as faces falling off the masks as if they were separate. To me, it's a matter of the inner world not lining up with the outer persona. I use a lot of layers in my work as a way to reveal or conceal my face, depending on how you want to look at it. Here I'm using thermoplastic and fabric, which I can mold and cut up and reattach to the masks. I see these as opening up like a flower to reveal the inner self. Here I'm using rice paper with the same ideas and making it appear as if the faces are breaking through that outer layer which was covering them, or that outer layer is being lifted up or pulled down. These are some examples of Japanese-inspired masks that I've made. I've combined my image with characters from Japanese culture into my masks and blended them in with my self-portrait. I draw inspiration from different characters from pulp culture, folklore, theater, different kinds of dolls, and lately I'm researching yokai, which are demons or ghosts. I also make masks that are inspired by different materials and Japanese artistic practices. These masks are made using rice paper or a variety of Japanese paper or even washi tape. Some reference shibori, which is a resist dye technique, typically using indigo. Another reference is to Japanese calligraphy here, and also sashiko, which is a kind of Japanese embroidery. These are techniques that I learned while my daughter was growing up, and then I've applied them now to self-portrait masks. This is some newer work I made last year in 2020. I'm always trying to find new ways to combine masks together. This one marks a departure in my work because up until this point, I was making them as ornamental pieces to go on the wall, but I only actually started wearing them quite recently. Here I use video and photography to document the process since I can't see through the majority of them, and then I find still frames that I really like. And here again, I'm playing with that inside space again and the illusion created, even though the face is concave. Here are 4 masks combined together. You can also see hidden faces on the inside of these ones too. I originally made this one simply as a sculptural piece, but one day I was trying on some of the other masks for a photo shoot, and this one was close by, so I thought I would try it too. It was a eureka moment for me once I saw the footage. I loved the faces fanning out from each other and capturing a glimpse of the hidden faces. But when I saw what I looked like when I balanced this mask on my face and it changed my body with its elongated neck, I was so freaked out and so happy. This sparked more ideas with how I can use masks to change my body and become something creature like or other by placing the mask on different parts of my body. Here's an example of me wearing it on the back of my head. And here too. This mask is made in contrast to the upside down pose that I'm in. I actually surprised myself by being able to do a headstand literally on my head. The face is right side up if I'm upside down, or it's upside down if I'm right side up. I was still interested to push how I can make more mask sculptures. I was introduced to a medium called flexible slip, which is a mix of latex and clay. I had to do the opposite of what I usually do, which is make my masks on top of a plaster cast of my face. This time I had to pour this stinky liquid into a negative mold of myself. And after it was mostly dry, it was still flexible and I could turn them inside out or roll them up. It was really fun to play with. Recently, a photo of them was on the cover of a magazine called Art Reveal, based out of Germany, which I was the featured and cover artist, which was such an honor. And I have a link to the magazine on my website. Here's an example of wearing one of these sculptures as a mask. You can see the piece is partially inverted when you see it from the side, and the photo on the right shows the back of the sculpture. But I also love this as a mask too, since it erases my features. These 4 masks are probably my 4 favorite if I had to pick. The one that split down the middle was made in 2018, and last year I made the other ones inspired by this one. The split mask has become one of my more famous masks. To make it, I took a saw and I cut it down the middle and then reattached it. I love how it can represent being mixed race or having a split personality or feeling different on the inside than what we present on the outside, thus becoming misaligned, which is what I call this series. This past fall, I wanted to do more like it, so I started cutting up my masks horizontally, diagonally, or in more strips. I love the result of misaligning my features. We all know how they're supposed to be, and so there's tension created by intentionally distorting or shifting the faces off center. Those masks led to cutting up even more into smaller strips, which I would wear as partial masks. And more importantly, they led to one of my favorite series, which is my woven series. So here's me wearing some of the partial masks, the strips. It was also a eureka moment for me when I realized all those strips could be woven together, and even better that they didn't weave that easily because they're paper mache and could be quite rigid, so it created a glitchy look. I would get my daughter to help me hold the pieces in place, and then the tension from each strip would hold together, but only briefly before falling apart. This video that I'm playing right now is in reverse, so instead of the mask falling apart, it looks like it's building itself on my face. This was a photo series of another woven mask variation. I tried making the strips diagonal this time. Again, this mask was only temporary. I love how each strip can represent all the experiences that have gone into making me who I am. It can also represent a facade that I've created as a way to protect myself. But the longer I wear this mask, because it's not glued together at this point, it falls apart, revealing myself underneath, totally exposed. This photograph was recently purchased by the Art Bank of Nova Scotia, which I'm thrilled about. A variation of this was also on exhibit at an Acadia University Art Gallery this past spring for a group show called Alone and featured pandemic art. When the COVID pandemic first hit, I instantly changed course and started sewing fabric masks to give away to anyone who wanted one. I couldn't believe how much resistance there was in the Western world to wearing a mask. A lot of people did not want to cover their faces, even if it meant protecting each other. It's been an interesting time to be a mask maker during the pandemic with such a spotlight on masks. It wasn't long before my COVID masks overlapped with my art practice, and there were some examples in the opening video. I started getting more into video work and I began learning how to use video editing as a tool to make more masks in a way. In video editing, you can make masks which you block out or reveal certain areas of the video, which you can then layer with more video. I would layer a bunch of self-portrait videos of myself wearing masks or face paint, and then scrub through and take screenshots when things lined up in an interesting way. This is a clip from a video called In Between. You can see the full video on my YouTube channel. This was screened at several film festivals and gallery exhibits. The latest was actually just last week at the Mixed Asian Media Film Festival, which was in the States but presented worldwide virtually. This barrage of images are all still frames that were taken from other video and then presented here together in this video. And these are some of the still frames that were in that fast-moving clip. I love working with layers because they again reflect masking, concealing, and revealing. I'm always looking for innovative ways to mask myself. I printed some of these photos so that they were life-size, and one day I decided to wear the photos themselves as masks, and I loved the results. This image here is a compilation of that and was also recently purchased by the Art Bank of Nova Scotia to go into their working public collection. I see these as digital masks, and it can relate to different personas we have online and through Zoom. There's a real dysmorphia affliction when we use filters, makeup, Photoshop, even certain angles to make ourselves look a certain way, and which results in real life disappointment in how we actually look. Young girls are turning to plastic surgery to look like their online selfie. And this has gotten worse during the pandemic due to more time spent online. These are self-portraits all based on AI outcomes, where I fed over 100 images of my different masks into Playform, which is a great software program for artists to use. I got many different variations and variations within variations, so I selected a few and then made them into 3D masks again using my process. I also made this using Playform. I fed the program photos of my face and also different photos of my masks, and the AI combined them together into these distorted forms. I know these might be disturbing to some, but now that you know some of my masks, I hope you'll find these interesting too. You can see the influence of the woven mask here. This is the split mask, and this is layers. I printed some of these and used the photos as masks again. Another branch of my work is using video projections onto my masks to create a hologram-like moving mask. These are best seen in real life where you can see them in 3D, but this gives you an idea. I'll set up installations with masks in a row, and then some of them are moving masks. I made this one using frame-by-frame animations, cutting up photos of my face and then projecting them onto the mask. This one is using video projections of my face onto blank masks, mimicking the masks around it using video editing and also with different expressions. This installation will be on display soon for Nocturne, which is Halifax's Art at Night annual event. And this is projecting video onto one of my photo masks as opposed to the blank white mask. I love when the video shifts off center and things become distorted, similar to some of the earlier masks I showed. And lastly, I'll show you a new series I've been working on this spring and summer. We grew up making origami with my mom, and I was inspired recently by a video my brother made showing how to make a version of a butterfly. I didn't know how. I had paper close by that was from my masks and it had my face on it, so I used that to make a butterfly. I thought it'd be cool if the eyes were on the wings, but the face got folded up on the inside. So I had to figure out how to map it out so my features would land where I wanted for each design, which is challenging and fun. These were actually on display in a group juried show in Texas that just ended yesterday. And of course, as a mask maker, I had to do a series of photos with these where I wear them as masks or partial masks. It's fun and playful, but it's also a really great way I can combine something like this from my heritage into my mask making practice. And this is a new one where I'm playing with different expressions on a fan that I can interchange. And I'll end it here with this image, although I have so much more I could still show you. There is a Japanese saying that we have 3 faces of self. The first face you show to the world. The second face you show to your close friends and your family. The third face you never show anyone. I hope that even though I'm making self-portraits, that people can relate to them and also see themselves. You can see more of my work on my website and on Instagram. I want to acknowledge Arts Nova Scotia for their support. A lot of the work shown here has been made through numerous creation grants, so it means a lot to me that my province supports me. And thank you everyone for listening today.